Hey everyone. So, have you ever done gesture drawings and just figured out that, man, my figures look so stiff, I don't understand what's wrong, what's happening, just where am I, why am I doing this, this is stupid. Well, today I'm going to share with you guys something that I learned a couple years ago that really helped me, and I've never really seen it talked about in detail like I'm going to do today. And the secret is in the shoulder girdle. So, this is just this typical bean, as Proko calls it. It's basically just mnemonics for the rib cage and the pelvis. So, we're just defining that in right here. And if you've watched any type of Jim Lee, Proko, Ryan Benjamin videos, David Finch, they all go over this and have pretty similar styles of doing it. And it's all well and good, and I use it all the time. I use it for all my figures. It can go something like there's a rib cage like this. And for women, it's a little bit thinner. For men, it's a little thicker, wider, I should say. And you've got the panty shape, and again, the opposite is true here. For men, it's usually thinner. For women, it's a bit thicker, and it sticks out a little more. But this is the shape that is usually missing in those videos that no one ever really talks about. And this is what it looks like when we turn it. Or how I think of it, at least, is kind of like a bell or a bell tower. And what that middle part is how it wraps around the neck. And so I'm showing it here. It's basically just the collarbones and how they connect in with the deltoids of the shoulders. So deltoid is just a fancy word for your shoulder muscles. And that's how it would look from the front, more or less. So now I'm going to do a zoomed in version just to show you guys how that would look. So we've got the side plane of the deltoid, and there are 3 parts of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and shade in that side plane just to define the form. Now I'm going to go ahead and box it in. So there was the side, there's the top. Now I'm going to connect the bicep in and the tricep. And then right in the middle of those two is what's called the brachialis. And that's right where the shoulder connects into, right in there. So here's the pec drawn in very roughly. Right from that connection of the deltoid and bicep, it kind of folds in underneath there and then twists under. And it's just important to keep this in a 3-dimensional way of thinking. So now I'm going to draw a Spider-Man pose just because it's so dynamic, and just show you how if you think of the shoulders as just balls and the collarbone as a bone that doesn't move independently, how just that'll just stiffen a figure right up. And even if it's in a super dynamic pose otherwise, it will just kill it. So this is a good thing to have for the basics. It doesn't have the shoulder girdle, obviously, but it does do a good job of showing how the torso and pelvis can twist independently of each other, and that'll give you a good idea for center line. And that's the only reference I'll really be using for this. And so what I've got going on here is the torso is leaning down towards us, and the pelvis, I've got that angled in and up, kind of. So the pelvis is actually tilting forward, kind of showing us the bottom side of that. So, got the neck hole in, again defining the angle of that pelvis. And the belly button is, if you draw the ball, it'll be right underneath the ball of the rib cage. So I'm getting the legs in, just kind of coming up with an idea. Again, I'm not looking at any reference for this. I'm just kind of coming up with something on the fly. Whatever I think looks cool, and just kind of going with it. I found out that it's pretty hard to actually draw wrong now because I've been doing it for a while the way that I'm used to. And it's very weird doing it like this. But once you guys get used to thinking about the shoulder girdle as something that moves independently and actually drives the force that's going through the rib cage and how it really affects the whole motion of the pose, I think it'll help you guys out a lot. So you can see just it looks very stiff. It's a ball, and it's like, well, the joint can only come out in so many directions. The arm can only move so far back, so far forward. And I'm even trying to push that arm back as far as I can. And, I could go super foreshortened with this, but why? And one interesting thing you'll notice is doing this, the head actually gets pushed up, which will also make the pose less dynamic in a lot of ways. Once I adjust this, you'll see the head goes down and really compresses the form. So this is a pose that you'll see and that I've seen other artists draw, I'm sure. And it's okay. It's dynamic enough, it's not bad. But it's just something's missing. And you might draw something like this and we're all our own worst critics and say, why isn't this as dynamic as a Ryan Otley? Or why isn't this as dynamic as a Humberto Ramos? And is it possible to even put anatomy on those? How do you do it? Well, as I'm showing here, I've got the original angle of the shoulders drawn in there. And then I've got how I would actually do it and fix it if I was drawing over someone else's work. So I'm going to try to keep everything else the same. And I'm just adjusting that angle. And it's going to hook right into the deltoid. Okay, so we've got the deltoid diamond shape going right into the bicep there. And I'm realizing that that's going to kind of kill the silhouette a little bit because that arm is going to be so much further down that it's going to come across his leg. But that's okay. It's just for instructive purposes. If I were to do this as a commission or whatever, I would change it. So now this back arm is so much higher that I could just flare it out from the shoulder, just have the forearm peeking out. But I thought this would look a little better, and plus it would have a nice little line of action there. And at the end, I'll show you guys what I was thinking about when I was doing this, and I just kind of saw it and was like, oh, that would be pretty cool to do. So here I am. I kind of saw another line of action for the legs. And that'll definitely happen when you do dynamic poses like this, where you don't have to worry about the balance of the figure because they're just kind of floating in the air. So there's where the head originally was. And now what I'm going to do is tilt the head down because the shoulder angle is so extreme that the head facing that way would actually be putting a lot of strain on the neck, and just it doesn't look dynamic. It looks stiffer than just having it be naturalistic looking and doing what a head naturally would do, even though he's Spider-Man and probably could do it. Why? It just fights the flow of everything. So now I've got the legs drawn in, and it's important to remember when you're drawing legs like this that you want the forms to overlap. You want what's in front to be in front. So we've got the calf overlapping that thigh, the hamstrings. And if you look at a figure in just about any other angle, unless they're kneeing you or something like that, the opposite will be true. The hamstrings will be in front of the calf. Like you'll see here in this back leg. You can just barely see a foot poking through there. And One thing that I did notice is that the quad was overlapping the obliques there, and you don't want that. So I'm just defining that belt line just to give the pelvis a good angle. And I'm not going to go super into costume details or anything like that. That's not the point of this, to do a finished drawing. And I feel like this video is already taking long enough as it is. So here I'm just showing kind of the lines of action. I don't really use this technique all the time, but I'm just kind of showing you how you could think about it. And this is how a lot of teachers will teach gesture, is to start with something like this. And I don't think it's bad, but I just don't think it's the most productive way or the most efficient way to kind of think about gesture. It's more of putting forms in a dynamic way, more than just, ooh, pretty lines, and now I'm going to put form on top of them. I think that's a really easy way to get lost. So now I'm going to go and do a figure punching. And this is a super common pose. Every artist that we've all liked has done something like this, all the way from Dan Mora, Jorge Jimenez, Dave Finch, all the way back to John Buscema and Jack Kirby, Frank Frazetta. They've all done something along the lines of someone punching someone. So this is something you might want to try and just see how you would do it without trying the shoulder technique first, and see if you think about, oh, well, how do I think of the shoulders? Do I think of them as something that can twist and move, or do I think of them as something that is connected to the rib cage in a set position? So here I am defining that collarbone area and basically doing the same technique as I would use, but just putting everything in a line. And I'm even going to add some foreshortening to this to try and make it dynamic, because one thing I thought of was, before I learned this, was, man, I need to learn foreshortening because my figures don't look dynamic. But if you watch good artists, they don't really even use foreshortening all the time necessarily. Now, if that's their niche, they will, but there are plenty of great artists. Frank Frazetta hardly used any foreshortening. You'll look at Patrick Jones, doesn't use hardly any. Jeffrey Watts. A lot of fine artists really kind of find it as a niche kind of thing and kind of untasteful. Even John Buscema and those classic artists didn't push it that extreme. So there we go, and there's a figure punching, and it's okay. Now I'm going to try and do the same thing on another figure, and I noticed that the angle of the pelvis was wrong. It needed to be torqued more, and just be kind of flat, just be looking pretty much straight at the camera. There's the whole of the neck, and I'm going to just twist this torso completely to the side, and you can see that's the angle that I had for the original pose, and now I'm just twisting it down and gonna see how that looks. So hold the neck, shoulder girdle on top, defining it in with just the ball, and adding the shoulder blade in, and putting the deltoid in over top. Going to connect that to the bicep and forearm. Going to try to get it as close to the same pose as possible. But again, you'll see that because the shoulders are tilted so much, I'm going to go ahead and put the back arm on a similar angle. But I realize the head is not going to be anywhere close to the same spot. So again, the head is going to come all the way down to about there. And just put in a center line, tilt the head down. And now I'm just connecting the obliques where it's going to fold. putting in the shoulder blade, putting in the center line for the back now because the shoulders have twisted the torso so much that I figure I'm going to see a little bit of the back. Going to do a little bit of contrapposto and push that right leg back since the right arm is coming forward. Going to push the left leg forward because the left arm is going back. And I'm just going to lighten it down and tighten up these pencils a little bit. Now, this is not going to be super tight or anything by any means, even when I get finished here. But it would definitely be tight enough for me to ink over if I was just drawing a guy with his shirt off or whatever. I would be able to ink this. Besides the face. I don't ever get to the face. But the figure is tight enough that I would be able to ink it. And I think it'll just get the point across of, the anatomy and the gesture and how to convey a pose in space and just something to consider that maybe you haven't thought of before. And I'm just going to go in there with a little bit of anatomy. And again, you just want to keep what's in front. You got the forearm extensors and the brachioladoris. And I don't know the names of all of them, but I know the major ones for the most part. Maybe that hand could be a little bit further forward, but it's okay if I really, really wanted to push it. So showing where the trapezius hooks into the deltoid there, makes a little horseshoe shape, connects into the shoulder blade, basically makes a little circle around the arm with the shoulder blade next to the teres major. Right here, there's a nice little rhythm, which is basically an S shape going into a C for the obliques, defining in the rest of the oblique area there, putting in the abs and stomach folds. And I'm going to draw in the other oblique, and it should be flared out a little bit, unless your character is Superman or has 0% body fat. Even the skin would probably fold over. So I'm just defining this back leg here, putting a nice peak on this quad, and there is a big muscle ligament that separates the quads and the hamstrings there that I don't know the name of. I've heard it before, I'm sure, but for all intents and purposes, this figure's done. I'm going to continue to noodle on it for a couple seconds here. But this is my first YouTube video. I'm sure everything will get a lot better. I'm planning on posting here regularly, but we'll see how it goes. I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave something in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's see who can be the first subscriber. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day. Thank you again. Bye-bye.